Is there anything that can be done to try to stop the killing, or, with the rappers and everything, to try to stop the beefs from happening or
Well, a
anything?
lot of times there do be things that can happen, but then you have to go back to local elected officials that doesn't get involved to contribute to make it sustainable to where when these guys talk and say like LA Gangs Unite with Nipsey Hussle with slang. You had 30 days of nonviolence where everybody was waiting for that to continue. But if you look at the record, Marquise Dawson never said nothing. No politician never came to try to help. No politician did nothing. And then what happens, it die out. And it's been done numerous times. Numerous times they've had opportunities, and I call it practicing poor, passing over opportunities repeatedly. And that's what happens. So when you go to talking about inner city violence, you have to look toward the local elected official as far as looking for relief, the funding, because you just can't ask somebody to drop their guns for a concert ticket. That's not going to happen. So we have to create a way to create a dialogue amongst sworn factions, the young, the old, the elderly, and give them all something to where they have a vested interest in the outcome. Right now, nobody has a vested interest. They have nothing to look forward to. They feel that this is what life is about. When in fact, you got a whole world out here. The world's a stage, and we all actors.
You mentioned the peace walk. Is there any chance that something like that could happen in the future again, or?
Well, they've had it over the years from the riots, the Florence and Normandy riots, to the 1992 truce, to the 100 Days, 100 Nights, to the first gang intervention program in 76, 77, which was the long table. That ended in a homicide. So there's been plenty of opportunities. You can never say never. Anybody can change their life once man can take your life, but God can give you a new life. I've had 2 life sentences by man, numerous assassinations attempted by every race it is. But God still has me here for a purpose. And at the end of the day, you'll start seeing that, hey, it wasn't me that was the tough guy all the time. You'll start seeing that it was God that was looking out for you through your thick and thin.
You mentioned you do a lot for the community. What are some things that people might not know that you do?
Well, I've just been honored with the Fathers in Hip Hop Award, where we believe the best hood is fatherhood. I won the Community Recognition Award for the 8th Districts. That's with Nipsey Hussle and all them. I won that award. I'm on numerous boards. Save Our Children, Justice for Murdered Children, Families to Amend 3 Strikes, Californians to Amend 3 Strikes. I'm an author. I'm a credible messenger. I do intervention and prevention. I do civil rights on some of the most highest profile cases that I brought awareness to, from Margaret Laverne Mitchell, Amadou Diallo, Prince Jones, Chief Park's granddaughter, the Harlem Grove Trotters that was killed. We've done a philanthropy of stuff. We mentored, lectured, held classes at school, worked for law firms, did investigations. I've done a litany. The Red Shoe murder that went 20 million in England. We got a lot of stuff that we do for the inner city. And right now, like I say, I've just been added to a board for the effective black parenting program training, which is for preachers, reverends, women, 3 of them white, 1 black. They asked me to join the board and be a mentor, so I'm proud of that. That's a 6 to 8 week program. And if you're interested and have a family that you like to get mentored to, whether you're with the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, to where your child is up under some type of what they would call it when you're up under the women, the men. We'll just leave that because I can't remember the name of it. But at the end of the day, you're up under custody, where you're a ward of the court is the word. And then we have the program to where you're not a ward and we train you. So we deal with the courts and where they might be separated, or we deal with the parents as a legal. And that's one of the things I'm proud of. And we also have the Credible Messenger Program, which is run by the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services and the mayor of D.C., Mario Bowles. That's a program where you certify I also work with Mr. Stop the Violence, that's Columbus, Ohio, Sean Stevenson, the Black Philly Mob. I work with King Tone of the Latin Kings in New York. I work with Antonio Testra from the Gemini Luciano Gambino crime family. All these are credible messages. Reggie Washington in San Diego, Atlanta, Seattle. We're all the ones west of the Mississippi. In fact, me and Ayatollah Marv are the first ones ever to be assigned as credible messengers west of the Mississippi. And right now they have a $121 million program that's fit to be implemented in Los Angeles.
Coming from such a rough background, and you said you beat 2 life sentences, going to prison, going through all this. How did you turn everything around in such a positive way? Is there any one instant or situation that made you go, man, I need to do something different and I want to see change?
Well, actually, my mother. My mother, for the first time, said, Melvin, don't break the law. I don't need you to go to jail. I want you to get a job so I can tell people before I die that my son went to work for the first time, so I went and got a job. And also, as far as bringing consciousness to the prison industrial complex, when I had my life sentence, since I was the first one to ever get released on a reversal from up under the California 3 Strikes Law in 1997. When I left, these guys asked me, don't forget about them, because they were in there for non-violent, non-serious offenses where they were getting Buck Rogers State on a law that was retroactively applied. So overnight, these guys went to having no strikes to 8 strikes from priors, and that's how it went with me. I was sentenced for $2 worth of drugs to where I received a 25-year life sentence plus a 10-year consecutive sentence. So that had me a promise to keep. And then when I caught the 83 years out here in Georgia, where I went to the Georgia chain gang from 2010 to 2014, after I got out of that, is when my mother said, cut it out. So I just changed my life around. I realized that man had gave me life, but God gave me a new life, and that's how I go. In fact, I'm fit to go enroll and start Bible school to be a preacher. So that's where I'm headed to now. In fact, we're going down to Dallas to look at some of the Bible schools down there. I'll be down there on the 7th, on up in there. Mm-hmm.
The 3 strikes law was something that they used against you.
Yes. I was one of the first to get it. It come out March 7th, 1994. Around March 14th, I was framed by law enforcement where they planted little drugs on me, did a warrantless search, and came and raided a house that I had just spent the night over for one night, and framed me, put the dope on me. I had a pass to go there to show that the search was illegal, and they couldn't prove it, and later on I got a reversal after serving 3 years and 8 months, when usually you serve 25, 20 years before you get released. So God was looking out for me, and I'm the first one to ever get out on a reversal.
So at one point, okay, let me make sure I got this straight. So at one point when they first implemented the 3 strikes law, they actually went back and hit you with a bunch of strikes.
Everything we plea bargained for. In fact, it's the only law ever in history that go back and adversely affects you. I'll give you a good example. Charles Manson was on death row. They abolished the death penalty and said it was unconstitutional. Charles Manson got off death row. Him and 300-something other death row inmates. Then they reinstated it back in 1977, and they started the death penalty back. They didn't go and put Charles Manson back on death row because it adversely affected him. But when it helped him, it applied to him and took him off. Now they made a 3 strikes law that was implemented through emergency measures, where the governor signed it as emergency measure. It wasn't voted on. They didn't vote on it till November of 1994. How I get arrested in March? That's because they felt it was an emergency measure and that it was for public safety. But in fact, it was when National Rifle Association, Clinton was running for president, and they seen that it garnered votes And that's when they went to tough on crime. Then they made the California, it's the only three strikes law that goes retroactive. All the other ones, you have to have a violent offense and you have to have 3 arrests after 1994. That's why California has more men and women and children locked up than all the states combined up under the three strikes law. So when you hear that Obama and everybody, Clinton when was apologizing for the three strikes law, it wasn't a federal three strikes law. When he said he created too big of a net, he's talking about the California three strikes law, because in my book I said in '97, this law creates too big of a net to where anybody, and it only applies if you have a non-violent, non-serious offense. It amplifies your case and the sentence, whereas if you had a serious offense, they already have a law, the habitual criminal law, so there's really no need for this law other than to help perpetuate this new industry called prison. So we address that. We've also had a three strikes initiative that went through legislation called the 2000 Three Strikes Initiative. We fell short on both. So I've been campaign managers, I've been community organizers. We've been a lot of things we've done in the public forum. For over 25 years I've been doing this.
And you mentioned you were in jail for 3 years fighting this. Were you fighting this the whole time?
Yes.
And so they reversed the laws.
No, they reversed my sentence. They still have this law in effect now in California. The law is still the same, but now up under the Romero decision. See, when I first went, it was mandatory sentences, no matter what you got. They made a law that the judge doesn't have discretion. But if you remember the Stanford student that raped the students, the judge said, I used my discretion and not give him this much time. They didn't do that. This is the only law where a judge didn't have no discretion in court, so that meant the prosecutor ran the court. And so when you're on trial for three strikes, you're not on trial for the case. You're on trial for your priors, because each one of them carry 25 years per charge. And that's how you can end up with 400, 300, 500 years now in California. And that's how they do it. Every charge is 25 plus, run consecutive.
Well, I'm glad they reversed it, or
Well, I got my case reversed, but they still have other guys that got 100 years for domestic violence. But when a black, after the O.J. Simpson trial in California, particularly in inner cities, you'll get domestic disputes. That's what the white person is charged with. But when a black is charged, it's a terrorist threat, and that changes the game to where they are eligible for three strikes. They get a terrorist threat as opposed to a white person getting domestic violence charges. So it's a whole lot that go on with these sentencing guidelines.